Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another Ace Combat reaction. Today we have Awakening. I was told by Patreon member Spinrift, who's the one that requested this, that I should also listen to Alicorn and the Hero of Cumberth Harbor all at once in a row so I can understand that they are all one piece, but I can't do that for timing reasons. I will be listening to each one as I go forward, like re-listening to the prior ones, just so I keep that context going forward. But I guess for now we gotta start with Awakening, which is a very fitting title given that it's the first one in this trilogy. So without further ado, let's go. It's a very washy hi-hat. Maybe that's a stack. Maybe. Whew. Sorry, that drum kit is really messing me up. Not in a bad way. It's just recorded in a very big room. You can tell that there's a lot of space in there. It's not a very tight sound, which is kind of cool. Whew. Very pingy snare, too. I'm loving the sound of that guitar underneath. It's kind of acting as a ground. I wouldn't be surprised if this was recorded like in a recording space, a stage for like an orchestra. It would make sense with the overall genre they go for. Maybe that's why the drum set sounds so huge. It has a lot of room noise. I love that move up. That like did it. I always find myself lost in these. Ace Combat and Project Wingman are both insane when it comes down to their overall feel, really. The way they're written is amazing. The energy they provide. I'm gonna have a lot to say about specifically how the drums are written for this song, actually. There are other things in here, of course, too, but the percussion in this one is just really standout for me. Woo. Woo. Beautiful drag fill on the snare there. Bit of a fade out. Really interesting takes on those drums though. So that's where I'm gonna start for this one. definitely. So first things with this drum set, this is a really cool thing for the drums in this one, and that's usually not something that I do get to talk about so much, because while the drums are always there in most of the music I listen to, it's just, this is a very cool way to apply a drum kit to a song. There's a lot of little pieces and parts in this drum kit that make it sound really cool in the mix as well. Like for example, this is an inverse recording of a drum kit. Usually when you hear them mixed, you're hearing the hi-hats and stuff in this ear, in your left ear, because that's kind of how you'd be sitting behind a drum kit. So a lot of people tend to mix that way, where like as if you're in the band. There's also people who believe the opposite, where you feel like you should be perceiving them as if you're in an audience, which makes sense for something so orchestral like this, where the kit is over here in this ear, and that's where it would be if you're sitting and watching a performance on stage. It's also possible the opposite is true in an opposite way, where the drummer could be left-handed and they just didn't invert that sound like they could have, because that doesn't really affect much, just where it lands in the ears. But especially when you're listening to a song like this and you're hearing all these very specific tones that you're kind of used to hearing in the opposite mirrored way, you're getting them in the other ear, so it kind of wakes your brain up a little bit. Whenever I hear a left-handed drummer's recording and that's going on and they don't flip it, I'm like, ooh, whoa. But then cases like this where I feel like they're trying to make you perceive like you're watching an orchestral performance, again, that makes sense given where the hi-hat on a right-handed player would reach your right ear, because that's just where it would be in the space, you know? That's just how it would be mixed in. But there's a bunch of things specifically on the kit that sounds super cool. For one, just using a really washy, really loose hi-hat sound for a lot of this, something that just takes up a lot of tail room on the hit. And what that basically just means, it has a lot of excess sound after the initial strike. So you get all this washy tone that just kind of holds out for a little longer than the usual sound you're expecting out of a hi-hat, which is a lot more sudden and striking. It's just kind of meant to get there and get out of the way and continue on with the rest of the drum kit's sound, because all of it takes up room. But most of it is usually the snare, because the snare has a much bigger decay, and so a hi-hat you usually want to get out of the way, you want it to be a little quicker. But that's not always the case, and it's not a rule either. It's very based on how the drummer is or how the composer wants it to sound. Just like how for the first minute of this song, you're hearing the snare drum in there, and it's subtle, and it's the same snare drum, but around the 1 minute mark, it gets louder, like a lot louder. Like he starts playing at like a double forte, and that's insanely loud. And I can tell it's the same snare drum. It's not like he has two different snares mic'd up differently for different purposes, which some drummers do. But this one's kind of nuts because they just decided to crank it up either in the volume in post, or they straight up had the guy on his sheet music say, hit this like a motherfucker, and he listened. And so like all of that makes a difference in how the song is perceived. At first, you're just keeping a beat. You're just keeping the backbeat and you're rocking steady. And then they want you to punch it. They want it, something in the song to feel so much more impactful. For the case of using a metal snare like this, it feels almost like they're just racking on the side of a giant plane, for example. A lot of these parallels could be used as a sound design parallel, especially because the kit is a percussive instrument. You can use it to signify those hits and those sorts of struggles with mechanic stuff going on. A lot of the time it's usually more subtle than this, but this is a very obvious sound, and that sudden change from a much more like subtle standard snare sound, that was a lot of S's, moving to this much louder tone is like, okay, there is a significant reason why that's happening, so it makes you recontextualize the song as you're listening to it. And another really cool thing that this drummer does is that ting ting ting, like that. That sounds so dumb, but the way that he's playing the ride cymbal, that pattern, that ting ting ting, the way that that's happening and the way it sounds like it's moving is because he's using the whole kit there. He's using the whole ride cymbal, which sure, while you're playing a ride cymbal, usually two of your favorite options are the bell or the bow, which is like the actual main part of the ride cymbal. In this, it sounds like he's going bell with the side of the drumstick and then back down to the bow. So you're just getting ding, ting, ting, and it's hitting the same note, but at a slightly different velocity, slightly different angle. You're going to get a slightly different pitch because you're using a different part of the cymbal that's shaped differently. But actually choosing to utilize that, the musicality of this on the kit is why I'm loving this so much, why this is so cool to listen to, because this sort of thing usually isn't done for songs that I hear too often. I'll hear a really cool beat, a really cool fill, a few of those in here as well, but it's just like those are kind of expected. But when you're actually utilizing the kit as if it's an orchestral instrument instead of just a percussive piece of lumber to smack around, and actually taking the time to break down the kit and what you can and can't or shouldn't use for certain things to be made clear. Like, that has such a cool rhythm to it, and it changes the tone just a little bit to be able to keep your ear awake, but also it almost feels like a struggling engine in a way. It sounds like something's knocking around that shouldn't be in there, but it's still keeping with the rest of the rhythm of the song. And the whole time, the regular beat still doing its thing, but adding that slight variation with that slight variation on where they're hitting makes it sound so much more alive. It sounds so much more prevalent in the song, and it's just amazing that people write like that, and it makes me nerdy and it makes me happy. But now getting into the stuff about the actual song that's really cool, and not just what the drums are doing that's cool. This song has the usual high-flying, high energy that I've come to expect, know, and love out of Ace Combat and Project Wingman, for that example. There are so many good songs in both of these games that reach this energy because of the keys that they're playing in, because of the choice of notes, the chord progressions they're going for. This whole da 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 da, like, that feels so intense, but it also feels like you can never let go of something. It's an aspirational sort of sound. It's this grounding force that comes back down from your absolute high, and it just keeps you going. It doesn't let you sink back down. It keeps your energy reeling all the way through, and it just sounds so good. And of course, the vocals, as always, making it sound so much more important. Like, everything has a weight on this song, and when those vocals are high and flying, they have the female vocals in there matching the males. It just sounds so large. It sounds like an entire choir of angels screaming at you and just singing your praises, maybe. And then the spot in the middle that kind of pulls you back down and brings you again to that grounded spot where you're just like, oh, wait. Let me recheck myself. Let me make sure I remember where I came from, the reality I'm in. This isn't a game. I am not a god here. There is some intense force that I still have to take care of that is a threat, and you need to be able to be aware of that. And this song does that. It brings you high immediately. It starts off pretty subtle, but it pretty much immediately ramps all the way to that height of the energy, pulls you back down to make sure that you haven't gotten cocky, and then pulls you back up once you realize, yeah, I'm not cocky. I am aware of my mortality here, and I need to make sure that I don't let that run away. So this is, as usual with these songs, an amazing uplifting track. I love how they handled everything in here. Obviously was nerding out a lot more about the drums in this one just because of their orchestral worth being finally utilized. I don't get that too often, so I get really excited when I do hear it, and this is definitely one of the most fun versions of the drums I've heard in any of these songs. It definitely spread out a little bit more and had a lot more of that attention on how the kit actually plays out in the rest of this song and places it in there so beautifully. So this is really exciting now, because now I can't wait to hear the other two that apparently are related to this one. And I know it's going to take a little bit of time, but not too much time. I've been trying to keep up with doing Patreon requests about once a week, and these will be more regular as time goes on. I might not get to Ace Combat every single time, of course, but I will get to these three probably within this next coming month to month and a half. So if you want to see those, please stick around. I will definitely be getting to them. And of course, if you have anything else you personally want to request, by all means, leave it down in the comments below, and I will do my best as always. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you just want to follow me for those in the future, you know how to do all that, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!